Good afternoon, fun seekers, and welcome to the second Cartoon Voices panel. We had so much fun doing the first one. We're trying another one with 5 of the most talented voice people you could ever imagine. Before we start, I wanted to mention that we are dedicating this broadcast to the memory of a lovely, talented man named Fred Willard, who we lost this morning. Fred Willard was a cartoon voice actor on rare occasions, but every time somebody in this show you're about to watch does something improvisational, makes up something on the spot, they are practicing the skill at which Fred Willard was the master. He was one of the funniest men you ever met, one of the nicest. He did improv classes, which many voice people, I know Bill Farmer was in his class, for instance. And every time I was around Fred, I laughed an awful lot. He was just a joy, and we miss him. And let's see if anybody on our dais wants to talk a little bit about Fred. Panel, would you come in, please?
Hey.
Hello,
hey, Mark.
Hi.
Hello, Mark.
Hi.
I'm in box 1. In box 2, we have Jim Meskimen. In box 3, we have Kaitlyn Robrock. In box 4, we have Debra Wilson. In box 5, we have Rob Paulsen. And in box 6, Mr. Gregg Berger. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks for not saying
time.
I'm weighing in at 145 pounds or anything like that.
Hey, box 6.
Rob, you were telling us before that you worked with Fred Willard not long ago.
I did, only a couple of years ago, and thank you very much, for having us here, Mark. This is a real privilege. But thank you for mentioning Fred. It was just literally an hour ago that I had heard. I did. I worked with him, I think, 2 years ago on some cartoon at Nickelodeon, but I'd had the great good fortune of working with him, I don't know, maybe a half dozen times in the last 20-odd years. And it's exactly what you said. Everyone who worked with Fred said exactly the same thing. And that was that, God almighty, is that guy sharp. And he's about the nicest person you'd ever want to meet, which kind of plays into what we were discussing a bit earlier, is that you've been kind enough to wrangle us together on the second go around. But all of us have done on-camera, theater, music, and honest to Christ, you are never going to find people who are more talented but utterly devoid of pretense than people who do this gig. There, just continually raising, the high tide raises us all. It's a pleasure.
Yes. I've been saying for years that the voice acting profession has about a 2% asshole factor. Does anyone think that number is too high or too low?
I think it's too high.
If you've worked with Gregg Berger,
Rob, he's
please, because Gregg, you did a lot
Right
of improv.
I worked with Fred probably less than a year ago. I get dates mixed up, but it was a benefit in Palm Springs, a live radio recreation. And I will say Fred got more economical with his contributions, but he was always listening. So that improv ear was never not there. Not that he wasn't, as talkative as everybody else, but you could see him waiting economically for the right moment to drop the bomb and eclipse everything that had been said.
Right.
He was so sharp. I was at a production at the Hollywood Bowl. They did a live staging of the show Mame with now I'm blanking on the ladies. Michelle Lee playing Mame, and Fred was playing like her partner, her whatever. And there was a scene where
her paramour,
a telephone rang, and the butler brought it over and said telephone, and it rang, and the sound effects and Michelle Lee picked it up, and the sound effects man rang it another time after it was off the hook. There was this huge laugh from the audience of that. And Fred Willard, not missing a beat, said, "Let me talk on that amazing telephone, please." Yeah. And he got the biggest laugh in the history of the Hollywood Bowl. Not so much for what he said, but how fast he said it. Yeah.
It was like that, and may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually worked with him as well, believe it or not. We were doing a soft drink campaign, and there were these interstitials that were going to be shown along with these soft drink campaigns of Fred Willard and about the soft drink and the soft and sexiness of it. And each and every character that was brought in would sit in a bed with him discussing the sexiness of this drink and how delicious it was. And it was all improv. And he was so gracious and kind and considerate. And of course, I grew up watching Fred Willard on Fernwood Tonight. And Martin Mull from Mary Hartman to Fernwood Tonight. And watching his skills was just extraordinary. But to have this what I call an unbelievable into a believable experience of actually watching an improv master, because I got my start in this business doing improv and watching him and stepping back. Truly, it's one thing when you know that the 2 rules of improv, which are just yield and don't deny anything, step back and don't deny, that you really want to do it with someone like a Fred Willard and watch the magic happen, and just any word that he says, you linger on. And then whatever word you say, it's not about being funny. It's about what can I do just to keep him going, because he's so amazing. And it really is stepping back and watching somebody else shine, and you shine in the process just because you get a chance to be in their light.
Oh, man.
100%.
Well said.
Exactly.
Does anyone else remember him from the Ace Trucking Company?
I was going to drop that. Of
Are you
course.
kidding? I used to watch him on the Tonight Show with the Ace Trucking Company.
And you doesn't have to call me Johnson.
Yeah, Gilly Saluga.
Oh, Saluga, right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's get to our business here of the
Great.
Cartoon Voices panel. I'm going to ask each of these people in turn to tell us what voices they have been doing in cartoons lately, the most famous ones they do, and to demonstrate them. I will preface this by saying that at any given time, most voice actors are under at least one NDA, non-disclosure agreement. The company that they work for does not want them talking about the new TV show that comes up, or more often the new video game that they're on, until the company is ready to announce it their own way. So I know a few of these credits these people have recently that they're not allowed to talk about here. Jim, let's start with Jim Meskimen, please. Would you tell us, yes, introduce yourself and tell us what you've been doing lately and where we've heard you.
Well, probably the most likely thing you would have heard me, and it's not necessarily an animation project, but I do the voice of Colonel Sanders on the radio, on the TV. So
Brilliant.
I've been doing that for about 3 years now, and I must say, it's a really nice way to spend your time.
Are you doing the you're doing the real Colonel Sanders?
I'm trying to do as much an authentic one, although they do push me to make them a little more silly. But yeah, I still remember the Colonel Harlan Sanders, all the commercials that I grew up with in the 60s and 70s, and getting him out of my head is impossible. So I campaigned and I got that role, and it's super fun. They have me doing all kinds of weird, wacky things. So that's the one that's the most probably woven into the culture at the moment. But I've also done Ultron's voice for Marvel Avengers Assemble, and also Pathetic Humans for various video games and online things. So that's where I have to kind of dial down my empathy and just be kind of nasty and cold. I know Robbie and I both worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he more than I, but when I do get to dip in there, I usually played Carlos Chang O'Brien Gimby, who was this newscaster. And it kind of looked like Purd from Parks and Recreation. And then, Robbie, I don't think you were in this one, but Jeff Bennett and I was on a show called Shaggy and Scooby-Doo.
Oh, yeah.
Get a Clue. And I played Roby. There was a nice robot that would help with things by breaking them and saying, "Oh my goodness," And that was with Frank Welker and Jeff Bennett. And now, I'm on the new Thundercats reboot, Thundercats Roar.
Nice.
And I'm not alone in this panel with that. I play the role of Monkeyin, and that's pretty much what he does. But I have a long history with the Thundercats, and we can talk about that at some point. And odds and ends here and there, but that's probably a good overview to start with.
Before someone asks about the mysterious transparent object that Jim has on his screen, I should explain he is on a green screen in the background, and the green screen is making the baffle on his microphone look transparent in part.
Oh,
so that is not some sort of mysterious orb that he has there. Thank you, Jim. Kate, let's put you. I just moved Kate. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong thing. Instead of going full screen, there you are. There you are. Now you're in box 4. You like box 4 better? Good.
Yes. There's a lingering smell I love here. This is great.
Jim.
Okay. Kate,
Jim.
Where have people heard you lately?
Actually, today was my favorite episode of Thundercats Roar that I did. And I'm Mrs. Gristity, a really nice old lady who takes care of Snarf on his days off. But she doesn't know he's Snarf. And I'm in that show a few times. And Jim and I worked on one where I was Gwen the unicorn, who was the last unicorn on Third Earth. And Molly Lava, who turns into a vicious monster if she gets into a volcano.
Nice.
And I'm Felicia Sundu on Disney's Amphibia, and I run the tea shop that's local to the town. And hopefully that Sprig will marry my daughter, and then we can have him work for free.
Oola, the little alien on Blaze and the Monster Machine. So fun. Let's go win the space race.
Excellent.
And a few others. They're sprinkled in, but this is the year of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well said.
Gregg, let's, I'm going to move you up here. There we go. Gregg Berger, sir.
Hey. So these are the years of me. I'd like to, I'm happy to say that like so many of us, who, if you want to talk about the past, you're also talking about the present and presumably the future, because some of these franchises have allowed many of us to work for years, decades, who can count. So going back and going forward, I'm Squeak the Mouse on the Garfield Show, which is the only mouse that Garfield won't kick out of the house because we're friends. And I'm Harry the Alley Cat who lives a few doors down. Why? Because living in a garbage can, food has a chance to marinate for a while. I'm Herman the Mailman who delivers to the Arbuckle House, but ooh, that cat. I've always been the animated voice of Odie. Wow. All the way back to and all the way through Transformers. Me Grimlock, me Dinobot leader. So I get to be aggressive with a big muscle, small brain. I was the Autobot Skyfire, leaning into my blue snowball mic. And while I'm down here, I'm also the detective Cornfed, who helps Duckman out of a lot of jams. But it all began because for quite some time, I've been one of the Eeyores for Disney.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ho, ho, it's nice to be somewhere.
Yeah, great.
Great.
Going back up on Nickelodeon, I was the Grumble, who's the monster's teacher. It is Grumble.
Love that show.
You're late for class. Sit down, you pusillanimous pieces of pond scum.
Great show.
Pusillanimous.
So I'll jump way ahead. I love anger management characters because I get it all out at work and love everybody before and after. So levels are great. Highs, mediums, lows, it's all great. I'll jump ahead. Thankfully, it's a wealth of treasure. I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop.
Okay. Thank you, Gregg.
Great.
Debra, let me
Great.
put you full screen here. Tell us.
Hello, everybody.
Yes,
Hi.
Hi.
tell us what shows we've heard you on the last few years.
Well, for Netflix, I did a series called All Hail King Julian, which is a spinoff of their DreamWorks film, Madagascar.
And I played the psychic advisor to the king, King Julian. I was a chameleon who was a psychic advisor.
And I also played
I also played Amy the alligator who talks like this because everything is about her and what she wants and what she wants to do. World is all about me as an alligator.
And I also played Tammy. Todd's mother also screamed out his name every 5 seconds when she was kind of Todd!
Whoa.
And for the new series that I'm working on, and that is for the Cartoon Network, it's all called Mau Mau and the Heroes of Pure Heart.
And I play one of the sweethearts who's just a sweet person in the town, and she's their many sweethearts, and she's one of the sweethearts. And I also
Play Ram. It's kind of yeah, kind of that. But I'm probably best known, believe it or not, in the video game world these days because I did a Lucasfilm EA Games video game for Star Wars called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Ooh.
And it's the first time that I played. In fact, I think I'm the only Black female Jedi in the universe
Wow.
for that. And
Yeah,
my
baby.
name was Seer Junda. And I didn't have to stretch far in terms of the voice and the energy and the love and the spirituality, which was really great. And Lucasfilm Limited, along with EA Games and Respawn Entertainment, said, we really want Debra to look like her. So when I was doing the motion capture for the game,
Great.
I got a chance to look like me. And it was the first time I've ever been on a game box. So
It
I'm
looks
very proud
just
of
like
that.
you,
Wait a
yeah.
minute. Wait a minute. They didn't want you to look like the character. They wanted the character to look like you.
They wanted
Now
the
you're
character
talking.
to look like me.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Now you're
Nice.
talking.
Okay.
Very
Thank
cool.
you. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
How
So do
wise
you-
are you?
do you
You've
not
gone
own
from
your appearance
Padawan
anymore?
to you went from Padawan to Jedi. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very nice. That's how
Anyway,
you
With
ascend.
my what I'd like to call my Manhattan transfer microphone.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Tonight Show, the old Tonight Show with Johnny Carson microphone. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, by doing these things online, I thought I would miss that expression on the audience's face of delight when somebody reveals some voice they do and do it. But you guys are doing it to each other right now
Oh,
here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
This is what kind of thing that Rob was talking about earlier. I have discovered that voice actors, while you may be an enormous fan of voice actors are enormous fans of voice actors, of each other. And it's one of the few kinds of acting where I think frequently, and you hire an actor and he says, you know, that guy does that kind of thing better than I do. Why don't you
Totally.
give him that part, whatever. Let's go to Mr. Paulsen here. Rob, sir,
Hi.
I have a hunch what the character, the voice you do that most people would like to hear you do. Could you share it with us? What's his name? What's that mouse you were doing?
Oh, well, I was doing Pinky a little bit ago. That's a character that a lot of people like.
Nerf.
And he decided to come back and live in my cabeza, which is Spanish for noggin. And his little character, his cartoon show compadre, Yakko Warner. Hello, everybody. Hello, nurses.
Stop! You didn't know?
Uh-oh.
Debra, can I just say, Debra, you are firstly just lovely, but you have such an incredible power in your soul and spirit and your voice. And I would like to remind you that we do live on a fault line.
You
So
okay?
that with your power, it might go.
But anyway, so
That was very cool.
Wow.
hello, Debra. How's that? There you go. Now you're talking. Okay.
See, that is what's so great about our gig is we kind of go, wow, Debra, then with Yakko. Okay.
Somehow here, Debra is going to find a way to break through the line between you two and ask for an autograph, Rob.
I-
Just
would
find
be-
your way to the next box.
Back and forth. I've been not one, but two of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If I live to be 100, I can knock them all out. But I was Raphael when Gregg Berger was a little boy. And then I was Donatello on a 2012 iteration of the TMNT. I'm also Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron. If you want to finish that croissant, that is me. And most recently, I did a one-off on a fabulous show called Rick and Morty. I've probably done half a dozen episodes, but
Rick and Morty.
I did one character on there who's a little dog looking for his testicles. And the first lines of this character were as follows: "Where are my testicles, Summer?" And I thought, now you're talking. Anytime that you can do a character and the first thing he asks are about his testicles, having been married for 30 years, I know precisely where mine are. And so that was an easy fix. But yeah, I have been, like our friends here, the incredible beneficiary of a remarkably wonderful career that has nothing to do with the way I look. And that is a huge gift to any actor, to literally be limited only by your imagination and the kindness of people to hire you. I have to say one thing that's very important, though, in our context is our friend Kaitlyn here. I have had the good fortune of knowing Kaitlyn for, I think we mentioned it, probably 20 years or so.
20 years, yeah.
Okay. And I met Kaitlyn when she was, like a lot of folks who come up to meet us at events, a young actress wanting to do this gig. She worked very hard, studied very hard, and has nobody has handed it to her. It is a really important thing that folks can see someone like sweet Kaitlyn, who's out there hanging out with Mark freaking Evanier. And your panels, Mark, are legendary in the world of Comic-Con. So this is a really big deal, Kaitlyn. And I think it's important to acknowledge not only from your peers, but from folks out there who are you. And it's nice to see that you're here, sweetie. You totally deserve it. It's great.
Apropos, I like whoever it was that said, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yes.
Ooh, that's good.
Way to go.
We will be taking questions later. Don't bother putting your questions into the comment. Those of you in the chat room, don't bother putting your questions in now because they'll scroll off by the time we get to them. But we have a request here. Rob, Ray Might Watch wants to see your Emmy. How can you go get your Emmy, Rob?
Oh, Emmy.
Is it?
Go get your Emmy, Rob.
Sorry, wrong.
Why don't you go get your Emmy, Rob?
Hey, why don't you
Rob,
go get your Emmy,
Emmy.
Rob?
Go get it, Rob.
It's right
Go
out
get
in the
it, Rob.
living room.
Go get it,
I've seen
Rob.
it.
Go get
I've
it, Rob.
seen it.
Actually,
Go get it, Rob. Go
I've
get
actually-
it, Rob. Go get it, Rob.
Oh,
Go get it,
Your
Rob.
Emmy,
I think,
Rob.
Go get it, Rob.
I think
Go get
what
it,
he's
Rob.
trying to
Go
tell
get
us
it, Rob.
is
Go get it, Rob.
it's on
Emmy.
eBay right now. He's
I
buying it.
think Jimmy's going to get one.
Jim went to get Rob. Yeah.
I actually am not at that particular location at the moment with the Emmy. See, Jimmy's got something at the moment. What is that, Jimmy?
That's a big ball.
This, actually,
Where are my testicles?
This actually,
Right there.
your
What is
testicle.
that?
There's one of them.
This is my father's award that he got in
Oh.
1958 for playing
Wow.
something at the Old Globe. So
Wow.
isn't that nice?
Wow,
It's a handsome
that's
picture.
very cool.
That is probably an atlas.
Yeah,
It's
Jim,
an Atlas Award, exactly.
Yeah.
Jim, since you told us, mention your father, I think people would like to know who your mother was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is.
Oh,
Yes,
Yes.
my mother is.
Is.
My mother is. My
Yeah.
mother
Yeah.
lives. Yeah, I just saw her. My mom is Marion Ross, who played on Happy Days. She's Mrs. C.
That's
She's 91. She's
Amen.
91
God
now.
bless.
She's gorgeous. She's
Oh,
so
Arthur.
beautiful. I had the great fortune of meeting your mother when you were on the podcast version we did at the John Lovitz.
Yeah.
This is so great. This is how sweet and thoughtful Jim Meskimen is. Hey, Robbie, it's Jimmy. I'm so looking forward to the podcast tonight. Do you think maybe my mom could come? Now, not only did your mom come along, but she was, as always with great people, it was all about other people. It was all about complimenting me and all of that. But may I say that your mother is stunning. Oh my goodness. She's really, she's not only Mrs. C, but she's got the grace and style and sheer beauty of a freaking movie star. She's just amazing.
Thank you.
Your
Very
mom
kind.
was America's mom.
Yeah.
That's right. She was
Yes.
my mom, and I'm black.
No kidding. Wow.
Yes. Thank you for sharing her with us.
Keep saying
Jim.
you're black. I have to adjust my set because I just don't see it. But
And you have your mother's smile.
Amen.
You have your mother's divine smile.
Yeah.
thank
And
you.
the twinkle in her eyes.
Yeah, baby.
Thank you. Those are kind
This
words.
is
I
great.
appreciate it.
This is so great.
And
It's so great.
let's tell everybody one other interesting thing about Jim. I used to work, as did everybody in my category, for Hanna-Barbera for many years. And Jim worked for Hanna-Barbera at about the same time. We never
Yeah.
met there,
No.
but you were working.
As
I
an
had
artist.
an office next door to a man named Doug Wildey,
Yeah.
who's
Doug
producing the
Wilder.
Godzilla show, one of the great he's the guy who created the Johnny Quest show, a lovely man. And the comic book fans will know his work very well. And Jim, you tell us what you were doing for him and around there.
Well, I was like 17 and I got a job working for Doug Wild. And Doug Wild, they talk like a guy out of Top Cat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a very
an
good Doug Wildey impression.
He had an
Right.
old fishing cap that he'd wear, kind of like a McLean Stevenson kind of hat. And he hired me to assist a very talented storyboard artist named Don Rico, who had done Captain America on comic books back in the day. And Don Rico was a very suave, very sexy 70-year-old guy he would wear a black silk shirt that was kind of unbuttoned, kind of farther than most people wear it. And he was just charming as hell, and he was so supportive. And I didn't know what I was doing. I got hired because I like to draw, and somebody.
Yeah,
felt
but
sorry for me.
wait, just hang on. Let me just interject. People, you will not say it, but Jimmy is a world-class artist. And so in addition to your incredible vocal and acting skills, that's what people they don't know, that you're a hell of an artist, buddy.
Do we ever cut to a
Renaissance
commercial
dude.
here? Because this is kind of one-sided.
All right,
Yeah.
we're gonna move on here.
Anyway, let's move on.
But we're going to stay with
Thank
Jim
you,
for a
Robbie.
second here.
You're welcome.
I would like each of you to tell me a voice. Now, Jim already mentioned Colonel Sanders, but I'll bet he's got another one. A voice job you did that wasn't for an animated cartoon. This can be a dubbing job, a looping job, a commercial, a theme park, some other skill you put your voice talents to that we don't know you did.
Okay.
Jim, you got another one besides
Yeah, I
Colonel
just thought of one.
Sanders?
Yeah, I did. I've done a few iconic kind of things, and one time they were hiring for the Honda Element. It's a kind of a people mover kind of car. They were looking for the voice of the Honda Element, and I went to an audition. I looked at the script, and I was like, "This looks like it's written for Napoleon Dynamite." And that was still a kind of a under the radar movie, but I had seen it, and so I read it like John Heder, and did this thing, and it was awesome. Anyway, I got the role, and I did, I don't know, a year or so of Honda Element ads, a lot of different ones, but it was always just a full on. I don't think they paid John Heder. It's a complete ripoff of his character, but
Homage.
it's an homage. It's a tribute. I was a tribute band for Napoleon Dynamite, a tribute one-man band.
Mr. Berger, give us something.
Animated, I've been kind of Kelsey Grammer's understudy for Sideshow Bob on The Simpsons for almost 20 years. So whenever he's not available, or which is often, I do table reads and records. That I know your question was not animated.
Okay, how about stand by for a talking car?
Stand by for a talking
car that when William Daniels isn't available.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm not a spot on anybody for anything, but I did have the good fortune of working with William Daniels in St. Elsewhere. And I sort of put that voice in my pocket. And, I do recall from that day of shooting or days of shooting that at one point his chair, we all had chairs to sit in, wasn't where it was supposed to be. And he said, can somebody get me a chair? I've only been in this business for several decades. Can I have a chair? Anyway, I put that in my pocket and took it along with me. I did because like so many animated actors, I owe a lot of my career and longevity to the fact that I'm such a lousy mimic. But when I go for something else comes out, which is hybridized or fresh or original or unique. But I was hired to cover Nick Nolte in a thing. And I don't remember why or where it came from or the name of the picture, but I did cover him, and somehow it was exciting.
But you did, going back, you did William the car for the Knight Rider a couple of times.
I never did the car.
Yes, you did. You told me you did the car.
Somebody owes you money, bro.
Or was it my mother?
All right. Okay. We will duke this out later. Fine.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Kate, what else have you done with your voice besides cartoons?
Last November, I did my first commercial where I was for Arco Gas, and I was a turkey. So we were hiding in the pen and going, did you hear about new gas prices, Turkey Tom? And they steal a car that has Arco Gas and get the flock out of here! And the farmer's coming with a gun, and because we don't fly, we drive.
With God as my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. All right, Debra, where else have we heard you? Now, you had a nice run on Mad TV, doing very memorable characters there. Tell us another place you've done your voice. That you've done voices only and other things besides cartoons.
I think the thing that I've been doing for a while that seemed to come up for this particular film was perfect. I do demonic voices, and I've been doing demonic voices for quite a long time. And then I got a chance to be in The Nun because James Wan, the director, had a series of films called From the Conjuring. And then there were spin-off films, and one of them was Annabelle Creation, and Annabelle Comes Home, and there was one called The Nun after The Conjuring 2, a character in there, and she was a demon was a nun.
I remember
the nun Valak. I do all the demonic voices for Valak when she possesses children, when she possesses other nuns, whenever she speaks. Wow. And through others, I did all the demonic voices. Myself and D. Bradley Baker. So it was a combination of our voices who did the demonic voices for the film.
What did your end of that sound like? What does your end of a demonic voice sound like?
Do you really want to know?
I'm sorry I asked.
You should be sorry you asked.
That's the kind of telemarketers I hear from all the time.
Debra, for the angel that you are, that's very demonic.
No kidding.
Yeah. Rob.
My battery's about to die. I'll be right back.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
What did I do?
You blow out our batteries. Rob, you've had a couple of very well-known national commercials.
Well, the one that seems to get the most interest, and it did to me too, was the that fabulous Got Milk campaign. That really was a legendary campaign, and the very first commercial was quite brilliant. Sean Whalen, a terrific actor, we all kind of worked with Sean doing live action on camera stuff. He's a wonderful character actor, and he played a night watchman at a museum. And he was listening to the radio on which yours truly was asking for folks to call in to answer a question for $10,000.
I remember that commercial.
Great
and
spot.
he couldn't do it because
he had he was eating a peanut butter sandwich.
Okay.
And so I call in saying that was Brahms Concerto No. 7. Now for $10,000, who shot Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel? And it's a brilliant spot. It was the first directing job for Michael Bay, and the camera pans around, and Sean Whalen is eating his peanut butter sandwich, and he sees the bullet. It says bullet fired by Aaron Burr, and so that's the answer. So he calls and he goes, and I say yes for $10,000. Who killed? And he goes Alan Burr, and I say, I'm sorry, Alan Burr. Well, hang on a second, and he goes to drink his milk. And it's empty. And I say, I'm sorry, 30 seconds. And I say, okay, better luck next time. Because I can't understand him. And then he goes like this and got milk. And so it was a very sweet spot. Decades later, I had somebody at a convention. And apparently because of YouTube, which was not a thing when that was filmed, it's back. So it's got like, I don't know, a couple of million views, and it is an iconic beginning to an iconic campaign lasting 10, 20 years maybe. They did Got Milk.
Oh yeah. My mom did one.
Did she really?
Yeah, with all the mothers, Florence Henderson.
They used celebrities. It was a brilliant campaign, and it apparently launched the career of Michael Bay as well. So yeah.
Unreal.
Crazy. Boy, I never would have guessed that.
Okay.
I know.
Weird.
Campaign.
Tell us about other commercials you've done.
Oh, well, Jimmy and I sort of worked together because I was a guy for Honda for about 7 years. Right. Called Mr. Opportunity. And I was a little animated guy. By the way, this is a great story for young actors out there because firstly, it's very kind of Mark to give us this opportunity.
Platform.
No pun intended.
Forum.
Yes. But we are all non-celebrity talent. I would submit that Debra has the most recognizable celebrity because she's a terrific on-camera actress, and acting is acting, whether it's your voice or your face. However, with respect to animation, look, man, we don't draw them and we don't write them, and that's fine. We're the point people, and we're very grateful to have this. But here's a great example of why you never say no to an opportunity that someone gives you. I was doing a regular commercial for Honda, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I got to know these people pretty well. And one day the director of the commercial said, hey, Robbie, I've got this idea where I'm going to think about pitching an animated character to Honda. While you're here, do you mind? I jot down a couple of things. Would you mind doing a demo? Now, look, technically, the producer should have given me another fee, and I could have rightly said, you call my agent and I'll come back maybe. The chances are he or she would have said, thanks, I'll take care of it later. And I probably wouldn't have gone back. But instead, as all of us would have done, I said, of course. I'm here without 100 other actors in line. Yeah, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity, no pun intended. So he said, well, here's it. It's called Mr. Opportunity. And, would you mind reading it? So I read it. It took me maybe 2 minutes. It was scratched on a piece of paper. called me 2 weeks later, said, Robbie, I think you just paid for your kid's college. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, Honda, you know, we were going to have a big open call. And that's where the luck of this business comes in. Opportunity meets preparation equals luck, because we put ourselves in a position to get lucky. So if you are, and we've all had those opportunities, most of the time they don't pan out to being a 7-year gig as Mr. Opportunity, but sometimes they do. And I love that we get these things sort of handed to us. And because of what Mark said earlier, we pass that along. Debra mentioned it. We always say, oh, no, I can do a demonic voice, but the person you want for this is Debra. You know, Debra Wilson, she's the person. Or D. Bradley Baker, or Gregg Berger, or Jim Meskimen, or whomever. And then it comes back to you, kids. It's really not, it's a freaking marathon. It's not about the score. It's not about saying, well, you really should pay me $400 for my demo. Bullshit. Mm-hmm. Take the opportunity and then pass it along to someone else. You just never know.
Absolutely. Let me add on to that, because I think what you're saying is not only brilliant, but inspiring and extremely transparent and truthful. But there are six words that I have as a mantra doing this. It didn't have to be me.
Totally.
It didn't have to be me. And not only that, but when you love what you do, it doesn't matter whether you get paid. You love the idea of the opportunity, because someone is saying, I appreciate you enough just in this, not based on money, but what you can do, that you're still in my forethought and you're in my afterthought because of what you do and who you are. Not just what you do, but who you are as a human being. Well, you love what you do. You show up with your enthusiasm. You do 1,000%, and you don't leave until the job is done and everyone else gets what they need. You love to be of service to what we do. And because of that, people say, I want to use you. I want to hire you. I want you to have this opportunity, because not only are you brilliant at what you do, but you're a great human being and a good guy.
Thank you, sweetie. And that's precisely what Mark was alluding to earlier. And we've said already 3 or 4 times. You really have to think hard. All of us have to think very hard for somebody that would say, nah, I wouldn't work with that guy or girl again. It's rare. Yeah. And precisely because of what Debra said, we know it's not about us. The characters are famous. And as a result of Mark's largesse, we are the point people. But dude, we don't draw. Well, Jimmy draws them, but most of us don't draw them and don't write them. We're very, very fortunate. And that is paid forward. You're right, Debra. You nailed it. Much more.
I have thoughts on much of what's been said. It is collaborative. And all of us who work and continue to work, in part, that happens because we honor the artist. We honor the writer. We know that they worked and slaved before we were the last in and the first out. And I'll say to the other point, I'll abstract it from gigs to the audition to the anything. If I'm occupying a microphone, part of me is aware of all of the people who are not occupying that moment at that microphone. I hear that heavy, heavy door slam and I think I'm in a sacred space. I'm not trying to get too warm and fuzzy, but it didn't have to be you. Someone already said they were willing to listen to you, or they were willing to book it. It's like,
that's my mantra.
Beautiful.
Right. So you commit to the process, but commit to the process, and the results happen when and if they happen. Well, and that pay it forward, pay it circular, it always comes back, sometimes tenfold.
Totally.
Well, because your joy is supposed to be so great for what you do that it has to spill out onto others. You have to love what you do so much. I'll be right back. I'm going to get my cord. I'll be right back. And compassionate, whatever
he's going to get his Emmy.
Spill out to others.
Okay.
If I could,
he's going to get his Emmy, really. Anyway.
May I say something?
Yeah, sure.
May I say something, Mark? One thing, too, that Debra touched on, and also Rob and Greg, and I'm sure Kate is also thinking of. I talk to a lot of people that want to get into this business and want to do voiceovers and stuff like that. And I discovered something recently that I hadn't noticed, that's a little bit of a flaw in the beginner's mindset a bit. And it has everything to do with this generosity of spirit that Rob just had that anecdote about. And I think we all have somehow, one way or the other, learned to do, which is to be giving and to have an attitude of, let me give you something, right? And I've talked to a few people recently that were like, And I said, well, are you, when you record things, do you make little shows, or do you give samples of your work and you put them online? And they're a little scared. And some of them say, well, I don't want people to take my stuff. And this, I'm like, you don't want people to what? I can't think with it, because I'm so geared towards, no, just put it out there, just give it away free. And exactly this point of like the universe will provide, all that stuff will come back to you. But there is definitely, I've noticed it in a couple of people I've talked to just in the last month or so, where they kind of go, I've gotten ripped off. And okay, the great way to defeat anybody ripping you off, I think, at least in the creative world, is to just get super productive.
That's better.
Right. Yeah. And get better and just give it and keep giving it away, because there's a lot of it has to go with that spirit. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yes, but there's a caveat, and there are management studio situations where there's a line, and it's a very perceptible line where you're being taken advantage of, and that's a whole separate thing.
Well, when we're talking about
that's why
a show or something.
Oh no, I totally get it. No. I was just going to say that's why representation provides that level of protection, important layer of protection.
Yeah, I'm mostly speaking of when you were beginning, when you're starting out, and nobody knew you had to just load up things with your voices and samples and things.
Totally, and I have had more than one occasion when, and you guys are all big improv folks. I've done things where I'll come up with an idea, and I will hear it in the show that I didn't get, and it might have been a really solid improv line. But I never really got bent out of shape about that. I always took it as a compliment, thinking you're onto something here, kid. Mm-hmm. So keep working on your chops. And I would even have jobs would come back a year or two later where Mark might listen to me and say, Rob, that's really not appropriate for this thing. And they'll call back and say, God, you were in the top 5, but ultimately Jimmy got it because he was the best. Then I'll get a call 2 years later going, I still have this audition. Remember that thing you did? It was wildly inappropriate at the time, but you were thinking on your feet. And we think it might work for this one. And I'll get a job for 2 years on something that I was unafraid to try just to red flag myself. And I, like Gregg said beautifully, these opportunities are sacred, man. And Hollywood doesn't need any of us. And to be in a position where people are going out of their way and even asking, that was great. You got something else, Debra? Sure. I mean, I always want to take advantage of that.
Right. I'm going to just dive into the chat room for a second. David Reynolds said, God, I love Debra Wilson. Well, we all love Debra Wilson. And he also said it before, voice actors show us how to be better humans. And we have a very fine writer with us. John Semper is online right now. As a writer, we are honored to have you all bring our words to life. The best part for me of working animation is working with the actors in the booth. The very best part. Hi, Rob and Gregg.
Hi, John.
John, very good writer person.
Oh, amen.
Now, part of my function on these panels is to tell stories about the great voice actors of the past that I had the pleasure to work with. And something that Rob said reminded me, I was in a session 25 years ago. We were casting a new character on a series. This was for Ruby Spears. And the voice director, who shall remain nameless, it was Alan Deinhardt, was...
the nameless Alan Deinhardt, they called him.
Actually a very nice man, but we had our problems. And, anyway, so Don Messick was auditioning. Don Messick gets overlooked sometime when people mention the great voice actors of the past. Don Messick was one of the most incredible voice talents who ever lived. I don't think there's ever been a guy in the business who had more voices than Don Messick. Almost none of them celebrity impressions. There's anything wrong with impressions, Jim, but Don Messick made a thing. He would not do somebody else without their permission. He would, if they asked him to double another another actor's voice, he would check with that actor first to make sure.
He didn't want the gig, yeah.
So he's doing, for this character, he's looking at the drawings and he's kind of trying different characters. And I thought all of them were wonderful. And then the director says to him, hey, could you do Marvin Kaplan? I kind of am hearing Marvin Kaplan in this voice. Could you do Marvin? And Don Messick, who was a very lovely man, did the classiest answer. He said, Marvin Kaplan would be great for this. His agent is Cunningham Escott DePini. And Alan got, okay, I got it. And they hired Marvin Kaplan.
Wow.
And
Nice.
that's good. Speaking of working with great people, I would like you each to name drop briefly somebody you worked with in the session that you were really, really proud to come home and say, you won't believe who I worked with today. Somebody from your childhood that you got to work opposite, someone who you just always admired. Anybody want to go first? It doesn't matter. Jim.
I'll go first because I just thought of it. When I was a designer for the Thundercats, the original Thundercats series, I was the senior character designer. I designed all the secondary characters and weapons and vehicles and stuff. I stumbled into that job in my 20s, but I got to finally go. And why I'm here on this panel really is because I got to go to a recording session at Howard Schwartz Recording in Manhattan.
In New York, yeah.
Ooh.
And saw the original Thundercats guys, sat in on that session. And that's where I went, oh, this is the job you want.
Yeah.
Because of the playfulness and the shorter hours and various other things.
Did you meet Lionel?
Oh yeah,
Larry Kenny.
Larry Kenny, not Tom
Yeah.
Kenny. Larry Kenny, the great Kenny dynasty of animated voices. He's Larry Kenny. Yeah, and the person I wanted to mention that came to mind was, because he was so impressive, was Earl Hammond.
Oh,
Earl
wow.
Hammond played the original Mum-Ra and played a lot of other heavies. And I got to work with him later on another Rankin Bass series after I stopped drawing for them and started doing voices for them.
yeah.
And Earl Hammond was a cantankerous kind of guy. He had been a kind of a leading man in the movies, and he knew Basil Rathbone. I mean, he really was like a character, and quite abrasive sometimes. But he could play these. He would play a heavy character like Mum-Ra, and it would be a physical event because of the big, we all know the big evil laugh. We've all had to do it at one time or another, where you just, sound like, give us that maniacal laugh. And he was a big man with a big frame, and all the air in the room would go into his lungs and come out. And it was just extraordinary. And with each successive villain, he would kind of dial it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him do this one for, I guess it was for the space one, Silverhawks. And it was another kind of character. And they gave this Silverhawks bad villain was named Dr. Bizarrely. And they gave him sort of Brazilian accent. And when he would laugh, it was... and
Wow.
it was like, seeing it was just like jaw-dropping to me. And then we'd all just kind of...
Yeah.
Wow, Earl, that was unbelievable. Clean your glasses off.
That's great.
Sensational, Earl.
Greg, who have you worked with that would impress us?
Holy cow. I mean, on camera is a whole separate field, but in booth, in voiceover, my God, I'll start with royalty, Mel Blanc, June Foray, Don Messick, Janet Waldo, Stan Freberg, Jonathan Winters, in the booth for
anyone we would know.
You know what? We would know, but some of those voices may, in fact, be anonymous, and that's the beauty of all of this.
Greg, tell them about your first cartoon at Hanna-Barbera. Tell them about the Jetsons when you.
I will.
Oh, okay. Did I just step on what you were going to say?
Not
right.
even. I'm happy to go there. I've gone there before. I have to preface it just briefly saying I did a play in Los Angeles that came out from New York. I was seen on a night that I had been an understudy in that show. It was a night that I went on. Gordon Hunt was in the audience. He was doing the directing at Hanna-Barbera. He sent a message back to me. I came out to see Gordon Hunt, for God's sake. And he said, if you're as versatile as what I just saw on stage, we should know about you at Hanna-Barbera. Rob was talking about opportunity. We share that. You don't mistake it for anything other than what it is. I said to Gordon, you've had my demo for a couple of months. If you could move it from the bottom of the pile to the top. Anyway, he said, you got a lot of nerve, huh? And I said, normally, no, but this, I see this as reason to talk back. He had me in the next week. He told the story. He said, I think he's one of the new kids. He pulled me aside. He said, I'm seating you next to Mel Blanc because that's where you belong. He said to the company, I believe this is one of the new kids. I want you to get used to him and be nice to him. He belongs where he is.
How about
so
that?
cut to the middle of the session, and sweet, dear, wonderful Mel Blanc fell asleep during the session. He's in studio more than he's in the rest of his life. And Gordon gently tried to rouse him, saying, Mel. And I, in my real life, saw Mel Blanc wake up as Mr. Spacely and go from to Jetson.
Wow.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh,
That's wonderful.
Great.
We had a lot of fun people on the Garfield show I did with Gregg.
Oh, Lorenzo.
And we had Don Knotts in the show. We had Buddy Hackett and Paul Winchell.
Yep.
And George Foreman played a fighter on the show one time. And we had James Earl Jones was recording in the next studio. Something, and he came over and asked us, "What are you guys doing here?" We said, "We're doing Garfield." And he said, "Oh, could I do a voice on Garfield?" And we said, "Well, have you got a demo?" I mean, no, we brought him right in. And he was wonderful on that show.
Yes, he was.
We had some amazing people in there.
And then there was the Robin Leach day.
Oh, am I going to tell the? Do I have to tell the Rob? I guess I have to tell the Robin Leach story. I wrote an episode of Garfield. I tell this story when Gregg's around because he's my witness that this actually happened. It doesn't. It sounds very unlikely. I wrote a Garfield episode called "Lifestyles of the Fat and Furry," and I wanted to have Robin Leach I wanted to have a Robin Leach voice narrated. And I thought maybe I can get Robin Leach. So I called his office in Los Angeles. They said, call his office in New York. I called his office in New York. They said, call his office in Connecticut. I called his office in Connecticut. They said, call his office in London. I called his office in London and they said, oh, he's doing a documentary on the Nile River. He will be gone for call
his office in Cairo.
That's right. Anyway, so I said, enough already. And I booked Frank Welker.
Yeah.
So we had Frank booked for that afternoon. I go into the recording session, the studio. We're going to be directing all day. I walk in at 9 a.m. and I say to the lady at the front desk, "Hi, are we in studio A or B today?" And she says, "Oh, you're in B. Robin Leach is in A." And I went, "Robin Leach is in A?" I went into studio A and Robin Leach is standing there wearing a shirt with $100 bills printed on it.
True.
And I told him what we were doing, and I'd been trying to reach him. He said, I'd be glad to do it. So he came over, and he did the voice.
Great.
And he parodied himself more than I would have let Frank parody it. He made the character sound even stupider than because Mr. Leach knew how ridiculous what he was doing was.
It was a great day.
Right after lunch,
fantastic.
Welker shows up, and he's been listening to his Robin Leach tape in the car to get the voice in his head. And he walks in and he says, "Okay, Mark, I got Robin Leach in my head. Let's do this." And I said, "Oh, Frank, listen, we've got some other parts for you to play. I found someone who does a better Robin Leach than you." And Frank goes, Better than me? Oh, really? There's someone who does a better Robin Leach than me? And I said, "Yeah, here, play a little bit of it." So we played a little of the track. And for about 15 seconds, Frank's going, "Oh, I got
Must be Jim Meskimen."
Anyway, then he saw us giggling and he realized what it was. But that actually happened. Robin Leach just happened to be next door when we were doing that episode. Kate, who have you worked with that's impressed the hell out of you?
These days we record alone, so it's hard to do ensemble, but Thundercats was ensemble. And the first episode I worked with Jim for Secret of Unicorn, they sat me next to Dana Snyder. And Dana Snyder, I love him so much. He's
Great
just
guy.
so funny in everything. It's the same voice in everything he does, but he's so good at what he does.
Like
I take
Lorenzo.
that back.
I give you Lorenzo music. Yeah.
And like you always know when it's Dana, but the way he pronounced words, the way he would mic test, he would just lean over and say like random stuff. If Jim was talking, he'd be like, Jim, it's, he pays them to let him come on the show, like things like that. And he was just so funny. And he made me a wallet.
Me
I have
too.
a wallet.
I have a wallet.
Oh,
too.
well, now it's not special.
No,
it's still special.
They're one of a
It's still
kind.
special for sure. He
One
made
of
me
a
a
kind.
wallet, and I was just so happy to work with him. That was my
great.
favorite.
And when he talks to the booth, he talks to Wes Gleason. He says, "Mr. Gleason,
Would you like to try my gravity pin, sir? Oh, perhaps you haven't one. Like,
That's great. Deborah, you got somebody that you worked with that you were really proud to be in a studio with?
Yes, but I'm drunk off of everybody else's stories right
Oh.
now, so I'll pass for this very moment. I'll come back to me. I'm just
Okay.
inspired and impressed.
Okay, Paulsen. Name
Again,
name 5 people.
all these lovely people notwithstanding, that's, they're inspirational, just our peers. Jonathan Winters, Mr. Blank, June Foray. I had an amazing experience. Well, more than one, but I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, I went in for an audition for Carl Reiner at Nickelodeon. Carl Reiner was doing a pilot for an animated thing that it was his. He wrote it. And I auditioned for the part of a Filipino ventriloquist. Something right in my wheelhouse, being almost clear. I'm so white, from Flint, Michigan. And so I got the job, and I go into the big room in Nickelodeon. It's no longer there, the big script reading room. Yeah. And to have the, going over with everybody else in the cast. And I walked in, opened the door, Mr. Reiner, Rob, thank you very much. I really never knew what a Filipino ventriloquist would sound like, but thank you very much. Good, congratulations. Have you ever had the pleasure of meeting Dick Van Dyke and Rose Marie? And I did that. I just went, and I, of course, hi, Rob, Dick Van Dyke. Yeah. And I swear to God, if Maury Amsterdam had been alive, he'd have been there. So that was quite, it was really overwhelming. I had to kind of get my shit together. And I did. As soon as I got done, called my parents back in Michigan. I said, you are not going to believe who I just spent the last 3 hours with. But I had the same thing with Jonathan Winters and with Steven Spielberg on more than a couple of occasions. And Mel Blanc, when I sat next to him at Hanna-Barbera on a Jetsons project, and I mustered up the courage to say, Mr. Blanc, I know you get this all the time, but if it's not too much trouble. And he knew what I wanted, so he looked at me and said, yeah, what's up, Doc? And it just really was like in the space-time continuum. And it was inspiring, frightening, overwhelming, nostalgic, all at the same time. Yeah, what's up, Doc? 4 words and a yeah. I mean, crazy. So, wow. Yeah, I have... You're talking to a lottery winner for sure.
I got to direct Mel Blanc once.
Did you?
Actually, he was in a couple of shows I wrote, but I wasn't the director on them. But we had to redub a Bugs Bunny clip for a CBS special that I wrote and was producing, and I had to we had to pay Mel. We had to redub an old Bugs Bunny clip, and we paid Mel what at the time seemed like an awful lot of money. But he was Mel Blanc, so you pay him an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
And we booked 15 minutes on the end of a session he was doing for another studio that day. And I went to this little studio in Hollywood that I'd never been in before that looked like it was built to store manure for the rest of the world. The cartoon studio was so cheap. I'm not going to mention the name, but it was Deke. That they
it stands for do it cheap, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would never have asked Mel Blanc to work in a building like this, but we redubbed the clip, the Bugs Bunny clip, and we were paying for 15 minutes, and he did it 4 times, and it was perfect. And I looked at the clock, and I had 11 minutes left, and I thought, well, we paying Mel all this money. Mel, could you do it again in Swedish? Mel, could you do it with an Irish accent? Anyway, so while we're playing around in the booth, I hear footsteps behind me. And the studio was half recording studio, half rehearsal studio. And there was a whole bunch of kids aged 18 to 24 in sweaty rehearsal clothes like they're doing chorus line. They were actually rehearsing a music video there. And they heard this and they come in and they're all going, is that Bugs Bunny? Is that Bugs Bunny? And I go, Mel, you've got an audience out here. He sees through the glass, and he launched into this bit he had. It was like a 6-minute medley of all his voices and impressions, and he did the English horse that he did, and he did some double talk. It was amazing. And then he brought all the kids in, and he had an attaché case with him, and in him he had these little 4x6 photos of him surrounded by Bugs and Porky and Sylvester and Tweety. And he asked each kid their name.
Wow.
And when they said their name, he repeated it as Porky Pig and then signed the card to them. And he gave each of them this souvenir that they are all treasuring. I got one, yes, anyway. And you saw the magic here of this magic of meeting Bugs Bunny. You've all at some point seen the expression on someone's face when they find out that you're Eeyore or you're Pinky or whatever character they love. We've seen actually this expression on Debra's face in this and the rest of you also. But nobody, I'm sure you won't be a fan of it. Nobody topped Mel Blanc when it came to getting that expression on people.
Never.
And he was so generous to them and so nice. And I saw Daz Butler do that type of thing. I saw June do that type of thing. And people like Paul Winchell doing that kind of thing. These are all really, really lovely people that we enjoyed working with. Debra, have you thought of anybody?
And you all lived happily ever after. This is I shared a recording space with Jim Cummings and Frank Welker.
Wow. A-team, baby.
And the interesting thing for me was growing up, and this is I won't call it embarrassing, but as a young girl, growing up and then discovering little by little this burgeoning sexuality, there were male characters whose voices I heard that kind of tickled me about the body.
Now you're talking.
And one of those was Jim Cummings as in the Transformers.
Oh.
And that voice, that deep commanding voice, that presence, that power, to me was less cartoon and more the kind of man that I wanted to marry. As a Transformer, as Optimus Prime, and just the name Optimus Prime, the Prime. And so hearing that voice, and not only that, but what sold it for me on a sexually exploratory level was
I love this.
The power, the morality to protect and to serve. At least for me, little girl growing up wanted a man who was going to sweep you into your arms and protect you and take care of you and do what was morally just for the world. So it wasn't just you. So that was the first time it was a non-sexual sexual experience for me. And to see the man who did that, who wasn't using his voice in that, because we were doing and many of you have done episodes of Curious George, and I did a couple of episodes of Curious George. So to have that happen, and of course Frank Welker being Curious George himself, as well as many others, and of course the voice that does creatures, and I started getting into that creature voice place. For me, it was D. Bradley Baker, so he was there. But the one voice, the one person that impressed me was not as famous as the others, was not as well known as the others, still had a plethora and a cornucopia of work. But the reason this was the most impressive for me was because of his heart, his soul, his integrity, and his willingness to open his arms to you, whether you were just beginning or were in the business as long as he has, or even older. Fred Tatasciore was number one for me.
Freddie too. Not same thing. Great
when
guy.
I first met Fred Tatasciore, he was open, he was loving, he was giving, he was kind,
very,
and thoughtful and considerate, very affable, very lovable, very accepting. And when I got a chance to work with this person, I had already had the prerequisite of the red carpet that was rolled out for me that said, "You've already been accepted, sweetheart. Just come in and do your best work, and let's do it together."
Yeah.
If only he was talented.
Yeah.
Poor guy hangs around. They give him work.
Always be Fred Tatasciore.
Fred was on the first of these we did, and he was just wonderful. Fred is wonderful in everything.
Sure
and it's very, it's nice when people feel said. There are people I will have on these if we keep doing them who will tell the story of their first session, and Frank Welker gave them a thumbs up at the end, and that was the moment of they felt they'd arrived. Frank,
Like being on Carson,
they've been touched by
that's right.
Christ.
Yeah. Frank is. I've never worked with anybody who's more decent and nice and kind and doesn't wear his stardom loudly.
Yeah.
I want to ask briefly here because we're going to get to the script in a moment. Now you're all working in home studios. You're not going to have those encounters. You're not going to be working opposite people like that, and it may not come back. You know, there are those people who say this may be the way the cartoons are recorded from now on. How do you? What is missing in your life when you do a session at home? What is missing from the recording session that matters to you? Would you be very distraught if from now on you did all your work where you are right now? Would anybody like to field this question?
Sure. Oh, go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
Just what you would miss is the part of every actor that's a child. What you would miss is the fact that when we play together in the sandbox at the studio, whatever you want to call it, the energy is contagious. The intensity is contagious. The comedy is contagious. Plus, we live for the schmooze, you know, the acting we do for free. It's the Orson Welles story. But it's that camaraderie, and you cannot know it until you know it. Yeah. And many of us have spent as much time with each other as we have with other families. So you can't say you do this thing and then you go home and that's your life. This is also your life, and it's an important part of your life, and the people are an important part of your life. So what would we miss? Oh, not much.
Well, ditto. That's exactly it. I have friendships that I have had the incredible good fortune to be a part of, at least 50% of, in the case of guys like Frank and Peter Cullen, 30 plus years. Greg, I've known you at least 20 years. Jimmy, same thing. Debra, and I've had the good fortune of working with Debra a few times. I've known.
I'm incorrect. It's Peter Cullen. It's Peter Cullen.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
All these
it's
people.
Peter Cullen.
And long time. I mean, the first cartoon shows I did were in the mid '80s. So I have people who've been Jack Angel, Mike Bell. Gloria, Morgan Lofting, people who have been part of the deal in my life for decades, almost 37 years. And I'm better around people who are better than I. I see that high tide raising all boats every time I'm in a session with one of you folks or Maurice or Tress. Or people who are just so good that they inspire you to try something and to take a shot, to take a chance. I'm grateful that I can still work from home and still pay the bills, but it's not the same. I really much prefer to be with everybody else. I really would.
Yeah.
I worked with Rob and Gregg on a show that nobody noticed called Channel Umpty 3.
Yeah.
It was on and off.
Jonathan Harris and Alice Ghostly.
Alice Ghostly and Jonathan Harris. The most fun sessions. Except that everybody in the session wound up talking like Jonathan Harris. Everybody, it was infectious. Everybody was talking like him. And
Don't talk to me, you sanctimonious bucket of bones.
That's right, yeah, it was all like that. And he was a lovely man, especially if you wanted to hear the same anecdotes every week.
Really, my boy.
Yes, and that was I would have hated to have done that show in splits with everybody individual. We talk about this. Ensemble means everybody's in the room. Splits means people are recorded separately. Yeah. And remote means everybody's at home in their own studio, and they may or may not hear the actors who they're acting with and such. It's
David Paymer was on that show. I think Neil Ross.
David Paymer.
Right?
Neil Ross was on it. Neil Ross was on it. Laura Summer was on it. And we had a couple of great guest stars. Welker was on it, and Mo was on it, and I can't remember everybody. We had Jason Gra came in and sang songs. Those of you who know Jason Gra, if you don't, he's an amazing singer he's been on more Broadway cast albums than anybody alive. And
it was a great show.
It was a great show, and we just had fun on it, and then it went on the CW network, and they had no idea it was on, and they never told anybody.
Yeah.
But we didn't care. We enjoyed doing this. Now we're going to show what you do now.
Oh,
Grab your scripts, people. Get ready for this.
Unseen.
These are scripts that I emailed them last night. They all pledged not to read them in advance. This is the same script that we did on the previous cartoon voice panel. And if we keep doing these, eventually everyone in the entire industry will read this script.
Very sneaky, Mark.
All right. Now, I'm going to assign
Do
the
not
roles
underestimate.
and give you some special instructions here.
okay.
This is the story of Goldilocks and the Three Little Bears. Mr. Meskimen, you will be the narrator, and I'll tell you in a minute what you're going to do as narrator. Mr. Berger, you are the baby bear.
Baby bear. Okay.
Kaitlyn, you are Mama Bear, and you have one line as mother.
Mother.
She's on the first page. I think it's like line 5.
Mhm.
Deborah, congratulations, you are Goldilocks.
Woo!
Okay, and Rob, you are Papa Bear.
All right.
Now, Mr. Meskimen, we've done this before. Jim has an amazing repertoire of voices.
Oh my God.
And he has 20 lines as the narrator. I have picked 20 voices of his. And he is going, as we come to each narrator voice, I am going to tell him, and he will not know in advance who he's reading the line as. He will do this. The rest of you can do any voice you want.
We've never met before today.
That's right. You can change it anytime you would like. I'm going to give you a moment now to mark your scripts. Jim, you're the narrator. Gregg, you're Baby Bear. Rob, you're Papa Bear.
Okay.
Deborah, you're Goldilocks. Kaitlyn, you're Mother and Mama Bear.
Mother
Now, while
and Mama.
you're marching them, I'm going to take myself full screen here and make my little speech that I do as a commercial each time. One of the things I push at the Comic-Con in San Diego is don't give in to people who want to charge you a lot of money to teach you how to be a voice person. There are wonderful coaches out there. We had Bob Bergen on the previous one. He's a great voice coach. Bill Farmer's a great voice coach. Charlie Adler. We'll go through a list of some of these people later. There's some very wonderful coaches. Most of them are people who are actively working as voice actors. There are also some unscrupulous people who will take your money, no matter how little talent you may show, and they will basically rob you. Okay.
I'll definitely give it back.
They can't see you, Jim. You're marking your script.
Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Yes. Anyway, it breaks my heart about almost every comic convention. Someone comes up to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a parent who says, listen, I really want to give my child the career he wants, and I spent $12,000 on lessons with this person, and
Yikes.
now nobody wants to hear his demo. Did I do a mistake? And it's hard to tell these people, yes, you went to the wrong person.
Yeah.
The greatest voice teacher who ever lived was a man named Dawes Butler.
Mhm.
And Gregg, you studied with him, I believe, at some point. He was just a
Peripherally,
wonderful
yeah.
voice actor, and Dawes, of course, was not expensive at all. In fact,
$10.
yeah, $10. I think he took it up to 20 at some point.
Wow.
It was worth $1,000.
Yeah.
But he would not take you on unless you showed you had talent. He would audition you, and no matter what size check you were willing to write, he would not take you on unless he was going to be proud of the career he thought you would have.
Yeah.
And there's people who won't do that. If you don't believe me, go into audition with all these people and be lousy. They will still tell you, don't worry, write me a check and you will own the house next door to Nancy Cartwright. It's not, it's something that bothers me tremendously. And we will probably do one of these panels online soon to completely devoted to that, talking about, we'll get some agents and some
Good
casting
idea.
people in, and we will talk about what you need to know, and we'll charge you nothing for it. So everybody, you have not had enough time to read this script, and I just lost Gregg here. Hold on. There's Gregg. I'm sorry. And now you people have rotated again. It's like a big square dance on the screen here. All right. Now, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Is everybody ready to start?
I'm ready.
Sure.
Good. Okay. Here's the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and the narrator to start this will be Patrick Stewart.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Goldilocks. She was called that because she had golden locks of hair, and she was very beautiful.
Hello, my name is Goldilocks. I'm called that because I have golden locks of hair, and I'm very beautiful.
Robert De Niro.
One day, she told her mother she was going to take a walk in the woods,
Jesus Christ.
and her mother gave her a warning.
Mother of mine, I'm going to take a walk in the woods.
Do not go into the North Woods, my dear. There are wild animals in there, and they like to eat little girls with golden locks of hair. Okay?
Mother,
Okay?
what alcohol breath on your... Oh,
It's schnapps and mint. It's Mama's favorite.
well, don't worry, Mother dear. I will not stray into the North Woods.
Okay, have fun, honey. Bye.
Casey Kasem.
But the trouble with Goldilocks was that she never listened to her mother, and it often got her into trouble. On her walk, she sang a happy tune, and it's coming in at number 13.
Oh,
God damn it.
Yep.
If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Oh, 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 oh. What does that sign say? Warning, no entering North Woods. Little girls beware. Oh, I'm sure they won't bother me. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Oh, oh, oh.
Sean Connery.
She continued merrily on her way on a path that would take her past a big wooden house. In that house lived 3 bears. A papa bear,
Hey, Mama, when's lunch going to be ready? Because, I'm starving.
Woody Allen.
The Ross was a mama bear.
I'm serving it right now, Papa. You just sit your big bear butt down, and I'll give you a big steaming bowl of my delicious porridge.
Wait, porridge again? Oh,
Well, I thought you loved my porridge.
oh, I love pot, but I eat your porridge. That doesn't mean I love your porridge. Oh, for God's sake.
You got
Tom
any more of that
Brokaw.
pot?
Tom Brokaw.
and lastly, there was her son, who was known as Baby Bear because he was a baby bear.
Yeah, goody. Let me add it. Mama does make the most delicious porridge. Give me some of that.
You see, Papa, someone here appreciates my cooking.
I love all your cooking, Mama.
That's right, you do.
Yeah, well, it looks hot. It's the only thing in this room that does, but I can't wait. Come on, my porridge is it's way too hot. Come on.
Oh, come on, Mama. Oh, come on, Mama. Oh, come on, Mama. Oh, Mama. Let me try it. My porridge is way too hot.
Yeah, you know what else? By the time this porridge cools down enough to eat, we're gonna starve, to death.
Papa Bear's right.
Goddamn right I am.
Oh, nonsense, my child, nonsense. I know what we'll do, okay? We'll go for a walk in the woods, all right? A beautiful walk in the woods. And by the time we get back, the porridge will be perfect. It's exactly like my mother made, and you're going to eat it until your bowls are clean. You got it?
Yeah, it'll be ice cold, but okay.
All right, thank you.
Sir Ian McKellen.
And so that's just what they did. They went for a walk in the woods, and being very trusting bears, they didn't even think to lock the front door.
Damn.
I don't know why we have to always eat porridge. How about some real food once in a while? Pork rinds,
Oh, can we talk? Okay, can we talk? You love my porridge. That's why you married me. So what's going on here?
Yeah, pork rind sounds... Oh, never mind. We all love your porridge.
Wait. Hold the phone, Junior. Let me tell you what real food is, Mama.
George Clooney.
Woo!
A few minutes later, who should wander past their house but Goldilocks?
Holy cow.
Holy shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess I made a wrong turn. I should go that way, or maybe this way, or that way. Oh, I'm lost in the forest. I'm hopelessly, totally lost, and no one will ever find me. I should tap dance, but oh no! I know who'll find me. A bear will find me and eat me. Maybe the people in this house will help me.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
She ran to the front door and knocked, but no one answered. In fact, the door opened slowly on its own.
Jesus.
Hello? Is anyone here? I'm lost in the forest, and I haven't had anything to eat, and I'm hungry and tired. Ooh, it smells like porridge.
Excuse me.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Her nose led her to the dining room where she found 3 bowls left there by 3 bears.
God damn it.
Yeah,
Can
really.
I just say, let me just quick time out.
Seriously.
Watch Jim. It's crazy. Watch Jimmy when he does what he does, and he really literally, well, look, Debra's a consummate improv artist, but look how Jimmy really inhabits the character. When you did the way you move your jaw, the way you move your eyes, when you're Tommy Lee Jones, the way you tilt your head, it's fucking amazing, Jimmy.
Not
When
the
it's right-
character, the person.
It's
When
possession.
it's right, when
on their
it's true,
face.
He's possessed.
Thank you,
He
brother.
when it's
on their
genuine,
face.
it's from the inside out. You don't put it on like a mask. It's from the inside out, baby.
It's
I'm
like,
sorry to break the flow,
No,
but you
no.
guys, this is like a master class. It's credit.
Th-
God,
this-
Jimmy. Crazy.
This is Rob doing his impression of Jim's agent. So okay, where are we here? I've lost.
privilege.
Okay, Debra, you're on with line.
wait.
We're on
is
a bell.
Can we do this? I know we are, but can we ask Jim to do another voice for the narrator again, just with the different voice? Because I just want to hear something else before I go into my lines. It just, if you don't mind.
Robin
Hold on,
Williams.
Hold on.
more coming.
I've got my list. I've got my list of Jim's impressions here. Jim, could you do that again as Robert Downey Jr.?
Her nose led her to the dining room where she found the 3 bowls left there by the 3 bears.
Jesus Christ.
I hope the people who own this house don't mind if I eat a little bit. Oh, this porridge is too hot. Maybe this porridge is too cold. Maybe the third bowl. This porridge is just right. I'll just eat a little.
Good girl.
Vincent Price.
She gobbled down every last bit of porridge.
Oh, sorry. But it smells like lollipops now.
Nice.
John C. Riley.
And then she staggered into the living room and she sat down in Papa Bear's chair and she broke it.
Oof. Oh, this chair is too hard.
Joe Pesci.
So she tried Mama Bear's chair.
Oh, this chair is too soft.
Droopy Dog.
Finally, she tried Baby Bear's chair.
This chair is just right. Oof. Oh no, I broke that cute little chair. I need to find some place to lie down.
Colin Firth.
She staggered into the bedroom where she found 3 beds. And she decided to lie down on the biggest bed, which was Papa Bear's bed.
Oh, this bed is too hard.
Ed Harris.
So she switched to the next largest bed, which was Mama Bear's bed.
No, this bed is too soft.
Antonio Banderas.
Finally, she lay down on the smallest bed, which was the bed of the baby bear.
This bed is just right.
Casey Affleck.
And as she was fast asleep, the 3 bears were returning home.
Okay, we're switching it up. Why do we even have to have porridge for lunch, Mama?
We've always had porridge for lunch, Papa Bear.
Yeah, I love porridge.
Yeah, well, that's because it's all you ever eaten, son. Wait till you're older and you get to taste some of the finer things in life.
Hey, the door's open.
Oh, it's wide open like someone walked in while we were away. What if it was some dastardly criminal who wants to steal our porridge?
Well, I'll tell you what, he's welcome to mine. Knock yourself out.
What if it's a monster? A monster with 20 feet tall and covered with green fur or something, with rows and rows and rows and rows of razor sharp teeth, even.
Oh, no, no, no!
I mean, what if it's the kind that can tear down a bear limb from limb and limb and limb and leave his body's limb and limb lifeless on the ground like an old rug in front of an old fireplace?
He's still welcome to my porridge.
Lead the way into the house, Papa, but take it real slow and be real careful.
John Malkovich.
Cautiously, they entered their house, feeling dreadful in the atmosphere as they made their way to the dining room. That was where they saw it.
Oh, no! Someone's been eating my porridge.
Someone's been eating my porridge.
Yeah, someone's been eating my porridge, and whoever it is has eaten it all up.
Papa, look over there in the living room. Your rocking chair is rocking all by yourself.
And the seat is warm. All right, someone's been sitting in my chair.
Someone's been sitting in my chair.
Yeah, someone's been sitting in my chair, and they broke it all to pieces.
What's in our house? Is it a ghost? Is it a monster? Is it a demon?
Nah, you're letting your imagination get the best of you, baby. An empty bowl of porridge and a broken chair doesn't mean there's a monster in the house, does it?
Yes!
Oh, well, then that's a horse of a different color, but that does. Let me out of here. I'm going back to the water tower.
Hey, stop! Do I have to do all the courage in this family? I'm a profile in porridge. Are you going to be a terrible role model for me, your young and impressionable son? If there's a monster here, we have to find it and defeat it.
I got to tell you, my son is right. This is a moment that requires courage.
Oh, that ghastly sound was coming from the bedroom.
I'll tell you what, that's not the only ghastly sound that's come from the bedroom in the last 37 years.
I'm doing my best, dear.
Yeah, well.
I'm scared.
You should be, son. Follow me. Atta girl.
Harvey Keitel.
Slowly, cautiously, they tiptoed into the bedroom, where they found...
Someone's been sleeping in my bed.
Someone's been sleeping in my bed.
Yeah, someone's been sleeping in my bed too, and she's in it right now.
I hear somebody. Who's here?
Hey, guess what? I'm sterile.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, George W. Bush.
Goldilocks ran from the bear's house and through the woods back to her domicile. She never disobeyed her mother, and she never went into the woods again. As for those three bears, the eponymous bears, from then on they kept the door locked. Oh, tell you what, that mama bear, she learned how to cook something else besides porridge.
Oh, for dinner tonight. For dinner tonight, I'm gonna make a roast chicken.
Hey, God, finally, love.
And I'm gonna stuff it. I'm gonna stuff it so hard full of porridge.
Uh-oh. Now, that's going to leave a mark, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's good eating, Ma.
Yeah.
Jim Meskimen, ladies and gentlemen.
Rob Paulsen, Debra,
guacamole,
Kaitlyn Robrock,
pal.
Gregg Berger, and Mark Evanier.
Wow. Thank you all.
Eponymous?
Wow.
Viewers, if you watch that a second time, watch the people who aren't talking. It's kind of fascinating. I cut to fewer close-ups because everybody was impressing the hell out of everybody else in that.
100%.
So,
100%.
Amazing job, all of you.
And can I say also, Mark, again, like Debra said so articulately at the beginning, this is not manufactured, folks. This is authentic. We have had the good fortune of doing this hundreds, sometimes thousands of times. And what just happened, it is a deep mutual admiration society. We all look at each other and go, where did that come from? I want to be like that. It's the greatest thing. This is all authentic.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Let me ask everybody here a little bit about the moment you decided you wanted to do cartoon voices. Now, some of you alluded to this earlier, but at some point you were all acting in some way. You were motivated to act. And at some point you make a decision, I want to do voiceover, even if that means I don't get recognized in public places, even if that means I don't get preferential seating in restaurants because they recognize me, even if it means that I have relatives who don't think I have work because they don't see me. That happen. I know a couple of actors who do looping and they make a fortune, but their friends can never actually see them. They're so anonymous in what they do. And they have people say, could I loan you some bucks? I haven't seen you working for a long time. At what point, and this is, I think this goes part and parcel with why voice actors are so nice. They've made that decision not to, first of all, go after life-changing money in jobs, because very rarely do you get a job that lets you buy a new house. You get a lot of jobs that eventually let you buy a new house, but no one job is usually that controlling of your life. And also, you've given up fame to a certain extent, although Rob is becoming a superstar with his personal appearances and things like that. Rob and Gregg were on the first cartoon voice panel I ever hosted down at the San Diego Con.
What?
Wow.
It was Rob and Gregg and Maurice LaMarche and Joe Alasky.
Oh my God!
We did it in a fairly small room, and we turned away 1,000 people. And the next year, they gave me a larger room, and we turned away 1,000 people. And the next year, they gave me a larger room still. And then at the last minute, they wanted to move us because Jean-Claude Van Damme decided he wanted to make an appearance at the convention. And they moved us to a small room. We put up this big sign that said, the cartoon voice panel is in this room instead. And we packed the room and nobody came to see him. And after that point, they gave me the biggest room they could that goes to somebody who isn't an exhibitor who pays thousands of dollars for their downstairs booth. And that's why we have this 3,200 seat room when we do these panels. And we still turn away 1,000 people sometimes. So. Anyway.
Is it always the same 1,000 people?
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
I think
and the strange part, Jim, is you do all of them. It's amazing.
They come just to be turned away. It's their thing.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
I think I've seen every panel. I think I've been to every panel,
I
Mark.
believe that.
Wow.
If you started in 2000, that was my first year, and I've been to every single one every year until this year.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a lot of fun to do them, and I've never had anybody be bad. I've never had anyone embarrass themselves. I've had people be better than others.
Well,
I've got half an hour.
I've been very, very bad at your panels.
We had at one panel we had Debra and Fred Tatasciore making a porn film behind the table, I think.
Under the table.
What happened at that panel table and behind it? No.
They're still trying to get it clean to this day.
Girl.
Okay, I have to do something. This is going to drive me crazy because I've been thinking about it the whole time. If anybody out there, if you really take a good look at the handsome Jim Meskimen, you'll also notice that he also resembles Bryan Cranston. I know if you haven't done Bryan Cranston, you can do Bryan Cranston. Please, I just got to hear a little Bryan Cranston from you, please.
Well, that's nice of you, Debra. In fact, I do. I like to evoke Bryan Cranston. I listened to his audiobook of his life story, and I tell you what, it's fascinating. And he used to work, he and his whole family worked down at the Corbin Bowl, which is just down here
in Woodland Hills on Ventura Boulevard.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's make Jim do a couple more voices from his list. Nick Offerman.
Well, it's about time you got to that one, Evanier. You were holding that in your vest pocket, but Yes, I was happy enough to work with Mr. Offerman. Very few of the voices I do are really possessed by people I've met in person, but Mr. Offerman is an exception.
Tobias Menzies.
Nobody
knows Tobias Menzies.
Well, if you watch The Crown, I beg to differ. If you watch The Crown, he plays the Duke of Edinburgh, and I don't know, he's just my latest man crush. Actually, I'm tremendously fabulous actor. He's nuanced and sexy and masculine and everything you'd want to be.
Sam Elliott.
Well, this mustache has helped me out a lot there, Mark. I tell you, I used to have to kind of project a mustache, and now I just wear it. But I made the mistake of coming up to Sam Elliott and doing something I never do with actors. You know, you never want to do the impression to the person. And I have a pretty strict rule about it, I thought, until I got knocked off my pins by rounding a corner at some studio and seeing Sam Elliott. And I had just done a Sam Elliott type of voice for, I think I did ADR for him on a trailer or something. So I felt like, oh yeah, you know, we're buddies. you person I've never met. So I went, hey, you know, Sam, hey, I just did your voice for a thing. And he went, boy, you can really get down there, can't you? So he put me right in my place. And I've resumed that policy of not talking to people in the voice. It's like Ron Howard is another one. I don't do Ron Howard if I can help it in front of Ron Howard, obviously, because I'd really like to work with him again.
I did Whoopi Goldberg in front of Whoopi Goldberg, and what she did was she corrected me and told me how to do her properly.
Oh, she coached you. Nice.
Yes, she did. I was
Nice.
working on a film with her where she played my mother, and she
nice.
coached me, and I was just flabbergasted that.
Give us a little Whoopi.
Okay. Well, you know, it's weird. She never says weird. She always says weird.
It's
and
weird.
that's what comes out whenever she says it. Weird. That's the way she does it. So it's never. And here's another thing. It's not never. I'll tell you right now. It's not never. It's never.
Never.
I never.
Never.
Yeah. And it's not like this hard. It's not like this hard thing where the R's are hard, but it's kind of right there where it's like, yeah, never. I would not never. But it's always like that kind of never.
It's a soft
I just
New
never.
York.
It's a soft New York. Never would do that. It's right there. I mean, it's right there. If you let it go, it's right there. It's right
It's
there.
all music, right? Craig and I, we talked about that before.
I got to meet Pat Buttram, and I'd stolen his voice on more than one occasion at LA Studios. And I thought, oh my God, I walked in and there's Mr. Buttram. He's probably 85 at the time. He's obviously gone now. But I said, he's two things that he just lit me on fire. Because, you know, he was also a stand-up vaudeville guy. And he had sharp as a tack. And I said, oh my God, Mr. Buttram, hi, big fan. I have to tell you, sir, I have stolen your voice on more than one occasion. He said, well, that's all right, son. I ain't using it much no more. And then I just wanted to keep talking to the great man. You know, so I said, it's such a I must say, you look great. How are you? Are you working and keeping busy? And this is great. Old stand-up. He goes, man, I'm great. I just met me a $5 hooker who validates.
We had Pat Buttram as a semi-regular on Garfield. He played a character named Cactus Jake, and he was on about 6 episodes. And he'd come in and he'd just tell us stories for 20 minutes. It was wonderful. So then I get a call.
Knew everybody.
Anyway, I got a call one day from an aspiring voice actor. A guy used to call me occasionally and try to get work. He didn't have an agent. He called me directly, which is a no-no. And he says, I can do Pat Buttram. I can take over the role and do Pat Buttram. And I said, I've got Pat Buttram. Why do I need a Pat Buttram impersonator? And he said, I can double. He could do another voice for the same money.
Oh.
And I thought that was about as tacky an approach I've ever had. So then I sat down. We immediately wrote a script with Pat Buttram's family in it. So Pat could we had Pat double. We had Pat do 3 different characters in his own family. Good. And Pat got on the phone to his agent. He said, I finally doubled. I finally did an extra voice in these things.
Oh, very quickly onto that note. See, this is so great because we could do this for hours.
Yeah.
You saying that we've all discussed how much we miss and love Lorenzo music. And Lorenzo, like Greggy said, did one thing like Kentucky Fried Chicken, Jimmy's other character, but he did it like no one else. And we had the same agent for years, and I'll never forget, you guys. You'll totally love this. We were both reading for a Halloween commercial, radio commercial for Knott's Berry Farm, and they called it a Halloween Knott's Scary Farm. Okay, so Lorenzo was to be the straight guy, and I was supposed to be Dracula. Okay, so it's like, hi, welcome to Knott's Scary Farm, and I say, can you please tell me where I can go, for the bobbing for blood or whatever it was. Okay, just a so great. We get ready to leave, and Lorenzo says, I just thought maybe we could switch. Do you mind if I do the vampire? And I said, well, it's okay with me. So I said, hi, welcome to Knott's Scary Farm. Can I help you? And he says, I'm a vampire. I came to drink your blood. I mean, it was Garfield. It was what he did.
He was amazing.
And let me tell you something. To this day, I have never wanted to know what he looks like because of Carlton the Doorman.
Right.
Because
There
of
you
that,
go.
it's so iconic for me that I don't want to know what Lorenzo music looked like. I don't want to know. I've never Googled him. I've never researched him. That voice is so iconic for me. I never wanted to know what he looked like.
For years, Debra, even on his demos, which, in reel-to-reels, he would never have himself photographed. He would be drinking, he would have sunglasses on or a cap and drinking a mug so you couldn't see his face.
Wow.
Yeah. No, he was an amazing guy. He turned down a ton of money to be the new Maytag repairman when Jesse White died.
Yeah.
They offered him a fortune. It would be going on camera. And
That
he
voice.
turned it down because they wanted him on camera. And but he was amazing. And we used to do Greg. Remember, when we used to do like a 7-minute Garfield cartoon, record the entire thing in 12 minutes.
Yep.
Because you guys were so fast. Lorenzo, you could use every single take he did.
There were guest stars who left insecure because it was over so quickly.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Dick Gautier. We had Dick Gautier guest starring on the show. Everybody knows Dick Gautier.
Yes.
And he
I'm
guest
in a
stars on the
robot.
show, and we did the 7-minute cartoon in one take. And I said, thank you, Dick, you can go. And he looks at me puzzled, and he leaves. And about half an hour later, his agent, it was Paul Doherty, was his agent, calls me and says, what was wrong with Dick? And I said, he was terrific. He was fine. He said, you dumped him. I said, put him on the phone. I said, Dick, it was fine. We're using everything you're doing. And he said, yeah, but I had money left on the meter outside. and I was looking forward to a day of working. I thought I was going to work all day, and I worked for 9 minutes. And can I come back and just hang around the studio? And I think I just hung around the studio after that.
It never stops.
Yeah, no, Lorenzo.
Real quickly on Lorenzo, because when I coach or teach, which is very irregular, but I love it. I've had voice students say, or at panels, I've been told if I can't do 50 voices, I can't be in voiceover. And I always say, I give you Lorenzo music. It's one voice, but my God, it always rings true. It's perfect in every application. It's literally the one and only.
Yeah, literally.
The rest are derivative.
And there's Marvin Kaplan, one voice, and Frank
Jack
Nelson.
Riley.
Jack Riley had one.
Eddie Deason.
Eddie
Deason.
There's a perfect example.
I
actually met Lorenzo before Garfield. They did a pilot, an animated pilot for a primetime Carlton Your Doorman series. It's on YouTube.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I was called in to work on it. And literally phone rings one day in my apartment. I pick it up and I hear this voice at the other end of the line. And this man says, hello, I'm looking for Mark Evanier. And I said, oh, hi, Lorenzo. And he goes, you made me that fast, huh? And Lorenzo, here's the best story. Lorenzo used to work one night a week or 2 nights a week at a suicide prevention hotline answering the phone.
Oh,
So someone would call up
that's
and
good.
then someone would be saying, oh God, somebody's got to help me. I'm drinking so much. I lost my job. My wife is leaving me. I've got this drug habit. I'm bankruptcy. Hey, you sound like that cat on TV. And he'd say, that's me. And they'd start talking about the Rhoda show or about Garfield or whatever. And he would talk this person not only out of depression, but into seeking professional help.
Wow.
He could do that. He was such a sweet man.
He could do that.
He would do that. And Yeah, he was quite an amazing
Sweet
man.
fellow.
Yeah. We have a lot of people in the chat room who are saying things. Rob said Lorenzo was so versatile he could do both Garfield and Carlton the doorman. We had a line in the Garfield one time where the doorbell rang, and I had Garfield go, "This is Garfield, your doorman."
Oh, great.
Lorenzo read it and went, "You just encapsulated my entire career in one line."
Wow.
Anyway, we have a whole series of people in the chat room, including our friend Secunda Wood, who is saying, "I have a girl crush. I have a girl crush on Debra."
Yeah.
And
Look at her.
Listen, V said, "Me too, Secunda. She's a badass."
Amen.
Yes, she is.
Going through here, I'd like to know if any of them can do a great Paul Frees.
Not me.
No, I don't think. Jim, do you do Paul Frees? I've never asked you this.
Surrender, foolish mortals.
Isn't that what he says?
Yeah, that's very good.
Pretty good.
You know it's pretty hard to hit because it's really the same. That
is a hard one.
Orson
The guy
Welles.
who does every good Paul Frees impression
Corey.
at Disneyland is
Corey
Corey,
Yeah.
Corey Burton. Yeah.
who will do this panel if I get a gun and hold it on him.
He's so sweet.
May take more
He
than
does
one.
it
guess.
all.
He is. He
Yes.
is.
Oh, Pshaw.
That Mark Martirosian, that Brian was amazing. All right. Jim, I was wondering if you could do an impression of Peter Weller since he's reprising his role of RoboCop in Mortal Kombat 11. Do you know Peter Weller? It's okay.
The only recording I have in my head of Peter Weller, he goes, "Is it him? Oh no, that's someone else." Sorry,
Okay.
just going through my system here.
You can't. Look, Jim's got so many voices. He can't.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Exactly.
What a freaking hack.
David Reynolds will repeat an earlier question. What about equipment starting costs? Someone wants to get into the business. What would be the to get together a little room like you guys have doing recording?
You know what? I'll bet you Kaitlyn could really address that because you purchased that stuff in a relatively recent time. Good idea.
Over to Kaitlyn.
When everything shut down, we had to record from home, and I had bought a skeletal. I'm actually outside of it because it's hot in there, but I bought a skeletal structure from Debbie Derryberry because she upgraded hers. And my parents came up and my dad helped install it in this alcove in my living room.
Did you get that from Derryberry Skeletal Structures, Inc.?
Yeah, ddshap.com.
Yeah, they're in Newhall. They're awesome. Yeah.
And we bought corkboard and like the spray adhesive glue. And I've been collecting insulation foam for like 5 years now.
Who hasn't?
And sleeping on it. And so it really feels like me. Cut it out, spray it,
Smells
cover.
like it too.
I know. I knock men over. So it covers the whole thing. And then I have like these blackout drapes.
Right.
I bought a Rode NT1 microphone. There was an Amazon package that came with a pop filter, shock mount, a mic stand, a cleaning cloth.
That's great.
And for like $300, it was so good. And I bought that.
All told, what do you think you've spent on your setup?
See, including like technically this structure, I would say it was about $1,200.
That's incredible. And you're doing broadcast quality work from home.
Yes. I got signed off by a studio that works for a client of mine frequently. And we did audio tests and they said, this is sounding great. If there's ever a hiccup for any of our work, like I do believe we will go back to studios at some point and we'll fix it then. And I need to, I want to see my people and it just, and I can't jump in here.
No, but that's really valuable information for folks out there because I think sometimes people, oh my God, studios are $500 an hour and they've got 18 different mics, and it especially even if you don't want to do it like Kaitlyn does it for money, you do it because it makes your soul happy, and you don't have to invest a shit ton of money to do something that really brings you so much joy and might even make you money. It's pretty cool.
A USB mic from Blue is very, very affordable. Yeti is very high quality. Snowball is more versatile. I take Snowball on the road, but just to that question, you also do what you need to do. I've had stuff that happened not from home but on the road where I learned it from another voice actor. You take the mattress off the bed, you can create sound deadening. No
Yeah.
one can create soundproofing, but you can do a heck of a job of sound
Dampening.
deadening and dampening if you go to the materials around you.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you know about
if it's
the
a closet?
sorry,
if it's
to
a
interrupt,
walk-in
but
closet. Oh, sorry.
that's all right. No, it's okay. I was just saying I've done exactly what you've done. And you do with a hotel, you make a little tent over the bed with the chair and the quilts and whatever and the pillows. It's hilarious. I used to do it all the time. But
I use
now
the
I
ironing
don't.
board as a console.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Ooh,
now I use the
smart.
Chaotica eyeball.
I have one too.
You know about the Chaotica eyeball, guys?
No.
No, I don't.
Oh, got to find it out. It's at Chaotica, Kaotica. It is a round foam sphere that you plug a small microphone up through the hole in. It has a little chamber in it, in the sphere.
Oh my God.
And a pop screen. And you can carry that to hotels, and it really deadens it out. I carry it in my car and do auditions in my car with it.
I have
It's the spirit of adventure. You anticipate a need and then you fill it.
I have a travel mic that's an Apogee MIC Plus,
I've got
and it
one.
goes in my phone, it goes in my iPad, and then I bought this tray you can fit over your steering wheel, and it's to eat food. But I put my microphone, my Apogee stand up there, and I can sit
Smart.
back and record and not have to hold it and have my neighbors look at me.
And you can drive as fast as you want.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, you can't drive as fast as you want.
No,
You can drive as fast as you want.
Actually, these days you can
You
drive
may
as
not
fast
be
as you want.
responsible doing that,
Jim,
but yeah.
don't make me come in there. Obey,
He will.
Because you have
obey
the
those
tray,
speed limits.
you've got your tray, you can record, you've got your vape, you've got your edibles, you've got your.
I got some good
Booze.
cush in the back. My
You
edibles.
don't drive.
I'm
You don't drive
fine.
so much as aim. I love it.
Yeah.
Aim.
You driving? I'm aiming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. Yeah.
If it looks like I'm not paying attention, it's because I'm going through the comments thread trying to find other questions here.
While you do that, Jim, could I hear some Robin Williams, please?
Oh yes, we didn't mention that I drew the Robin Williams Blue Genie for Disney. That's a little company in Burbank, and I've been doing that for about 10 years or more. Maybe, I'm not sure. Robin had to sign off on it, so that was nice.
Wow.
Wow.
You're amazing.
Thank
Just
you.
amazing.
I'm teared
wow,
up
wow.
just hearing that. Robin is so important to me, and that was so good.
Oh,
sweet.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great
Great.
honor, and now
Wow.
it's when I do it, it's a kind of a obviously a different kind of vibe because now you really want to maintain a
course.
lot of integrity to it, and that was a very moving event. If you haven't seen, I wrote a poem about it, and I performed it in Ramon's voice when he passed away,
I did
just
see
because
it.
I couldn't get out of my head and had a lot of thoughts to express about it, and but people always really love this voice, and it's a great honor to be able to do it.
Well,
I have to gear my mind up about 5,000%, but then it's not so bad.
Let me.
While Mark is
Yeah, my friend
Mark
Maggie.
is-
My friend Maggie Thompson. Let's put this before we get too far. That microphone Kaitlyn Robrock has mentioned is spelled Rode, R-O, with a line through the O-D-E.
Yeah, it's Rod.
And they'll put the line through the O for you right at the
That's
shop.
how they know it's a good quality,
right.
like IKEA, but not
Jim-
IKEA.
Jim
Okay.
Meskimen.
Yeah.
I want because Kaitlyn is so emotional right now, and it's such
I
a beautiful
am.
thing.
I'm
Will
always
Will
emotional.
you give her just a little bit of an inspirational speech for what she does and how great she is as Robin Williams? Because I want to see her cry again, please.
Well, my gosh, Deborah, that's nice. You've really teed it up. So, Kaitlyn, listen. I mean, you're just you're not. I don't think of you as a beginner because I've already seen your work. I know you know what you're doing. So the point is to just keep going. Just kind of screw your courage to the sticking place, wherever that is. If you can't, go to a chiropractor. He'll show you where it is. And carry on. The world needs more laughter. The world needs more character expression, more love, more empathy. So maybe you're the vessel. So just vessel, I guess.
Georgie Vessel. I love it. That was great call, Deborah. That was great.
Thank you. Good.
Thanks, Vicky.
We're going to wind this down here in a minute here. I want to tell you that each of these people, with one exception, is reachable on social media, and they have a whole bunch of things that you can
There.
of them. Jim, let me see if I've got the right number up here. No, that's nope, that's Greg. That's Jim. Oh, and then I don't. This is. I haven't got this configured right. I'm sorry. Jim is at www.jimmeskimen.com. The Instagram handle is Jimpressions, and he has a YouTube channel full of great videos. If you think he has a lot of voices here, go look at it over there. And
Thank you.
just go to YouTube after we're done here and search for Jim Meskimen, and you will be amazed at how many things he does. The way this is supposed to work. The way this is supposed to work is, let's see,
like that.
Yes,
Perfect.
like that.
Yeah.
Because Rob is on Twitter at Yakko Pinky. Instagram, Rob_Paulsen, and on Facebook, he's on Rob Paulsen, voice actor. And Rob also has a book coming out any day now. Rob, move to your left a little bit.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
There's
yes,
your book
thank
cover.
you very much. There's my book. It is out actually now and available on Amazon online. It's called, you can't see the subtitle, maybe, Voice Lessons, How a Couple Ninja Turtles, Pinky, and an Animaniac Saved My Life. 4 years ago at this time, I was just finishing up treatment for stage 3 throat cancer. I'm fine. I'm going to die someday, but not from that. But the story is an important one to tell. It is just not just a compendium of, and then I did, and then I did, and then I did. It is precisely what we've been discussing today, and that is how all those characters really helped me through my own time in the cancer cage. But more important, the reason they did is because I got to see for the last 30 years the power of, in my case, Raphael, Donatello, Yakko, Pinky, Carl, and parents of children who didn't make it, who spoke to Raphael 15, 20 years ago, got in touch with me and said, you know, we're really thinking about you. We're praying for you. We're doing all these wonderful things. You will never know what Raphael or Pinky or Yakko meant to my little girl or boy. And they're gone now, but you just need to know that. Not Rob Paulsen, Yakko. And that is an important thing that many people who are watching this understand, just like Bugs and all the others, the depths to which these characters live in people's souls and help them through the most impossible circumstances that most of us will never have to experience. And I learned a great deal, not only to never take my job for granted, but never take the power of joy for granted. And what we do and what you do, Mark, in giving us this forum is nothing short of a miracle. And the cool thing is that we can all pay it forward and share it with each other. We have our own little ways to do that. So thank you for letting me shill for my book.
Good. Okay.
Very nice.
People
Well
will
said.
rush and order this thing. Kaitlyn, I think this is, let's see if this is, yeah, there you
Yes,
are.
that's me.
You're on Twitland. Twitland.
Twitland.
Yeah.
I had some Twitlins
I've
last
been,
night.
I've been doing this too long. Twitter at Kaitlyn Robrock and Instagram K Robrock.
Yeah.
And,
fun fact, I also wrote a book.
oh,
But this was holding up the microphone to keep it level with my face. So
and it's good for other things besides that as well.
Oh, for sure, for
It is,
sure.
yes.
I've read it twice. I've read
It's
it
a
twice.
multi-purpose book. Thank you, sweetie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Berger.
Hey,
Let's
hey.
see if I have the right one for you. Yes, there you are. Twitter at Gregg Berger, Instagram GABNDJP, Facebook.com Gregg Berger.
That'll be me.
Yes.
A quick to Rob's point. I didn't put it in the contacts, but I'm sure our panel, if not, you should be, are familiar with an organization called Famous Phone Friends. I've been with them for 20 years, but they went away for a period of time. They're back. They're back via Twitter. And what we do at Famous Phone Friends is make calls in character or introducing characters to pediatric hospitals and brighten people's day that could use brightening. It always feels so good.
Isn't it great? Thank you, Greggy. Good idea.
And Debra is not on social media. Debra kind of is social media. She's
Amen.
I don't think there's been a social media invented that could contain this woman, but she is, we had Debra on one of my Business of Cartoon Voices panels one time. And I mean this in absolutely a positive, wonderful way. She turned it into a revival meeting, inspiring new people who wanted to get in the business, and stayed around for like an hour and a half afterwards, talking to people out in the hallways and helping them out. And I wanted her on this panel because she has this electricity above it. Obviously, she sounds good, but there's an electricity that comes out of this lady that I just find amazing, and I wanted to share that with you along with. And I think you got to see it here today.
Thank you, everybody. Yes, I'm grateful.
Thank you.
Indeed
Anyway,
grateful.
Thank
Indeed
you.
grateful.
Does anybody
Deeply grateful.
have anything else they want to plug or talk about they're doing before we get out of here?
Oh,
anything?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm heading to the little boys' room right now.
Yes, that's right. Well, we're so we as all the males here are. We are going to do more of these. I'm not sure when. You will probably want to keep your eye on my webpage, which is www.newsfromme.com. News from me. ME is my initials, and that's where I will announce future panels that we do first. Then they'll be in the usual places. I have a lot of other people want to do these, and we'll schedule them at some point. And I want to do one of those panels about the business end of animation voicing, so that people don't get ripped off. And I just want to thank everybody here. You've all been terrific.
A blessing and a pleasure.
And again, if you watch, if people who are watching this, if you watch this again, look at this shot whenever we have it, and watch the faces of the people who are not talking. It will probably tell you more than anything you're hearing verbally, because these people, and this is how people are in most recording sessions. These are technically in a strange definition, these are our competitors, but really no, I don't think, Gregg and Rob have never taken a job from each other, or from Jim, or Debra hasn't taken one from Kate, or Kate from Debra, or whatever it is. And people all work together. There's like a very few exceptions to this, of people who are kind of selfish or very rare. And I'll tell you, most of those people are not very talented.
No, and they don't last.
Because they're fear-based.
They're fear-based, and
they're desperation-based.
Yeah,
Mark.
Yeah,
no pride.
Yes.
Mark, there should be statues of you erected in front of the San Diego Convention Center and many other places.
Maybe not erected.
I said, there you go. You are an actor's director.
Have you seen how many pigeons are out there these days? You don't want I don't want to be a statue out there. No.
Yeah, but they say when it falls on you, it's good luck.
You are an actor's best friend. You are an actor's director. You're an actor's writer, and we know.
Oh well. Anyway, thank you. Thank you
for loving us. That's what it comes down to. Thank you for loving us.
The recording sessions are so much fun. We look forward to them. It's actually very nice to be with people who are happy to be working and enjoying what they do. And I love it when we can call. Gregg knows that in a lot of the Garfield shows, I've used actors who hadn't been used a lot lately, actors who were older. We did a session one time, Gregg, where I had 3 actors in wheelchairs, 3 older people, and they were fine. They were wonderful.
Fabulous.
And you find that there's a certain love for doing this, because you don't do it for the fame. You don't do it so you'll be recognized in the street. You're doing it because you just love the feeling of acting, to do that and to try to do a little bit better. And everybody here knows that the best way to get better as a voice actor is to act opposite good people.
Hear, hear.
When I worked with Gregg now for 22 years, something like that.
Easy.
And Gregg was fabulous when I first worked with him, and he got better and better and better, because we on the Garfield shows, he got to opposite Stan Freberg and Chuck McCann, and we had Larry Storch in the show one time. Larry Storch. We had yes. In fact, I'll tell you quickly what happened. Dawes Butler, who I think was the greatest voice guy ever, and I was fortunate to be my friend. And Dawes had a stroke, and he came back. He did a Yogi Bear special that I wrote, a primetime Yogi Bear special for Hanna-Barbera. It was his return to the business, and Dawes had very high standards, and he was reticent to work because in the stroke he had lost his peripheral vision. He couldn't read ahead on the copy as much as he had, and he felt that harmed his performance. And so he would take 4 takes instead of doing it the first time. Big deal. 4 takes. The 4th take by Dawes Butler was worth the first take by anybody else. So I booked him on a Garfield, and I was having him play 2 parts. One of them was a fast-talking salesman. I was going to have him use the voice that most people know from Hokey Wolf, which is kind of a Phil Silvers type voice.
Yeah.
And the other part he was going to play was a stuffy businessman. And the part of the voice I was going to have him use for that was the impression he did off camera. He never did this in front of a microphone of Stan Freberg, his old partner.
Oh.
He did this arrogant impression of Freberg, and it was very funny. So anyway, the day before the recording session, Dawes called me, and he was not happy with his reading. He'd done a workshop. He says, "Please let me out of this. Let me get my peripheral vision back. Let me." And I said, "Sure, anytime. Just promise me that the next time you're ready to work, you'll work for me." He said, "You got it." And he passed away before that could happen. Anyway, but I called Paul Doherty, who was Gregg's agent at the time and Jim's agent, I think, at some point. Anyway, he's been a lot of people's agent. Great, one of the best voice agents.
Yeah,
and I said,
I
need someone to replace Dawes Butler in something. And he said, well, one of our guys who works out of New York and works from our New York office is in LA at the moment. It's Larry Storch. And I said, Larry Storch, I'll take him. Give me Larry Storch. So Larry Storch came in. And everybody here knows Larry Storch from F Troop and all the things he's done. And he's still working. The guy is still working. He's
in his 90s now.
He's in his mid-90s. A couple of years ago, he did stand-up at the Comedy Store.
Yeah, I was there.
See him. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, he did stand-up. They had a 94-year-old guy on stage doing stand-up.
And
his jokes were still fresher than half the guys who play that club.
He was funny.
So anyway, he comes in and he pulls out of his wallet this tattered, like a business card, and it's in little tiny handwriting. It's a list of impressions, and he hasn't used it for years. And he says, "Here, this is what I do. I just really do. I don't have any original voices. I just do impressions of obscure movie stars, because, like, he did Phineas Whoopi on the Tennessee Tuxedo Show. That was his Frank Morgan impression.
Right.
In fact, he told this story of how in the old days of radio, when they used to have to do the show twice." For the East Coast and the West, they would do the shows live, but they do it live to the East Coast and live to the West Coast. He was on a show with Frank Morgan, the guy who played the Wizard of Oz, and between the two broadcasts, Frank Morgan would go out and get so drunk that Larry would do his part on the second show because he couldn't do it. Anyway, I looked at the list and I saw Phil Silvers on it, so I had him do the Phil Silvers impression. And then I looked to pick out an arrogant businessman, a character to play the arrogant business. I couldn't find the right one. I said to him, I want you to do an impression that's not on this list. He says, I don't do impressions that aren't on that list. I said, I'll bet you do this guy. Billy DeWolf.
Oh my
Everybody
God.
remember Billy DeWolf?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And he had done a sitcom, very obscure. I'm the only person alive who remembers it, except Stu Shostak, if he's watching this. It was called The Queen and I. It was a 13-week thing on CBS on a Love Boat type setup. And Billy DeWolf played this stuffy captain of the ship, and Larry Storch was a grunt on it, and his face lit up, and he went, yes, Billy. So he did Billy DeWolf as the other character, the businessman type. And I got all these calls from people saying, my God, how did you get Billy DeWolf on the show? And I said, well, he hasn't worked much since he died a few years ago, but I managed to book him, and it was exciting. And it was Larry Storch. And one of the things that I'd done when I've directed shows is I try to book everybody I could book who was on it in the movie It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, which, as people know, I'm kind of obsessed with. And I'm on the commentary track of the DVD, and I have, posters and photos. So that's why on Garfield, Gregg got stuck working with Buddy Hackett and Don Knotts and Jesse White and
Such a shame.
Freberg and Lenny Weinrib, and I just kept bringing all those people in.
My gosh.
And then I got to, we brought in, what I'm doing here is making a little pitch for the older voice actors. I think they get neglected by the business a little bit. And even if they take a job away from one of you guys sometime, eventually you'll be one of them. So it'd be nice if to keep them
in a matter of months.
Anyway,
and before you go, I'm hoping that everyone who's out there, who's watching, who's listening, are taking notes. Don't just sit there inactively. Be proactive. Look these people up. They're icons. It's like caring about pop music, but not knowing classical music. It's really, really important. And if you want to do this, don't do it because you saw somebody else doing it and they got a laugh. Do it because it's something that's in your soul. It's organic. You can't help but create this thing. thing, and you'll do it because it's like a lover who'll sometimes love you and sometimes doesn't. You're still committed to it. And if you really want to commit, get to know who these people are, and don't be afraid to say, I don't know them. Then find out. This is the great path to a great career and a great path to humility on top of that, to go, these are what came before me, and I'm learning who I am and what I do based on them. I'm not just because of what I heard and not just because of what I think I can do, but they are my inspiration enough to know that everything that they ever went through and everything that I'm ever going through, there is a mirror there. It is a mirror of life, and you're never going to really truly be a successful human being, let alone a successful actor or voiceover actor, until you really know your roots. That they are your roots. Know who they are.
Drop.
Love them.
Good.
Yes.
And we can't top that. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Kaitlyn.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Debra. This show will repeat here on YouTube ad infinitum forever. Tell your friends. Watch for the next one of these things we do. And everybody wave goodbye now. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Love you all. Thanks, Mark.
Love you all.